rally from happening. This is just on Easter Day this year. The person is resting. During his burial, they couldn't let him rest in peace. And now then you see that he's even already gone, but they're still haunting him. So it's a big situation that we are going through on a daily basis. Radio talk shows. 2 weeks ago, a radio station was open, and there is a program every day, every minute, preaching against homosexuality. Every minute, every station. They are allowed to show pornography in church, and the government is not coming out to stop them. Yet for us, for simply having a small meeting and saying, we need to take care of ourselves, we need to protect ourselves, they are closed down. We've seen religious leaders going on national television with vegetables, showing people how homosexuals have sex. We've seen them going on television with utensils, showing them how homosexuals have sex, and that's why their intestines are out, and that's why they are ruptured. And the government is quiet. Yet for us, just a simple saying that people let us live in peace, causes we've seen members of my community very depressed, mentally disturbed because they cannot take it. And we are losing human resource in our own struggle because people are tired, cannot take it. I have a member here in my organization who was a very, very strong weapon in our organization, but she just couldn't take it. She had to leave. And now we are saying that activists are leaving the country. In the last 6 months, we've seen 8 people leaving the country. These are very strong activists. But because of what goes on, now the movement is starting to wake up. Because they're keeping exposing people. People are frightened. People are scared. Now people are going back in the closet. They're withdrawing. Because they're like, if front activists can be killed, what about me? You know? So the movement is actually getting weakened because of what is happening. And the only way we can do that is to come and seek solidarity from our international partners. What we can do is come and learn from our international partners. How did they go about it? Because our situation is not unique. People have been like, Iceland has been there, but you managed to succeed. How did you do that? And that's why I'm actually having this tour around successive countries. And even countries that are not successful, like in Africa, 39 countries have these laws criminalizing homosexuals. Six of them have the death penalty. So we want to find out why is it that in the 21st century, the government can really propose a death sentence when governments are actually trying to scrap the death penalty. And we are also doing a lot of work within our own movement to find out why is it a big deal to be homosexual? Why is it that in the past, people never minded? Why is it that it's now that everyone is talking about homosexuality? Which is a good thing for us, actually, because people used to say we don't exist. But now the debate is up and visible. So now Ugandans, well, we have people in our communities who are homosexuals. But we also want to find out why the hate now. But I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really hoping to engage with the audience. I'm sure you have lots of questions, but also not only questions, but also even ideas and suggestions of what you think or share what you did during the times of this struggle. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Martin. Sure.
Well, how to follow this, what to say after this without something really hollow. Well, Anna Paula, actually, she touched upon what I was going to say, because, well, as you see, I'm getting older, and my friends who were gay, they had to leave Iceland, they had to move to Copenhagen, exactly as you said, and they were never open about it until after leaving the country. So a lot of things have changed here in the past, let's say, 30 to 40 years. Last year I was in Athens and I took part in the Gay Pride Parade there. We followed a conference on gay parenting or gay parents, and I was so proud at this conference because I was always telling everyone of the great situation of gay people in Iceland or LGBT people in Iceland. We have the same act on marriage regardless of whether it's gay people married or heterosexuals. Gay people can adopt children and so on. And I was, like I said, I was so proud, and people were always saying, oh, the paradise, Iceland, I wish I could move there. But then it got me thinking as well, it just did not happen like that. It was through the hard work, for example, of the National Peer Association, and their peer education was really effective. And well, in a relatively short time, I have to say, because 30 years isn't really a long time, we have managed to bring about drastic and radical changes. But then at the same time, what we have to do is always to be on the alert. Because if we sit back and think, well, now we brought about a change, everything is wonderful here, well, we run the risk of a backlash. And this is what has been happening, for example, with, well, the women's movement or women's rights, along with other factors. Another really complex thing is exactly what you touched upon, the freedom of speech, for example, media freedom and so on. It's so important to have your voice heard without any repercussions, and to be punished for being who you are is, well, hardly ever acceptable, at least. So, but then we have the other side, it's the hate speech factor. So you have to guard the media freedom, but at the same time you have to counter hate speech. And there is now an ongoing campaign in Europe, hate us, or no hate, and then there is this hate me. You confront the person, you tell them about yourself, who you are, and well, I'm hoping that this will have effect. But then taking this to a Ugandan context, the way you were describing to us how things are going on in Uganda, one gets, well, a bit, or more than a bit, actually one wonders, would this bring about change? I think it will, and the pioneers, the people trying to bring about change, well, they are always the ones hardest hit. They are the, well, even the martyrs sometimes. So to be doing something like you are doing, it requires such a terrific amount of courage. So I applaud you, I have to say. And then, yeah, because of course, like, I could go on forever, so I'm going to start now, but we always have to be on the alert. We have to make sure that people always, you know, that we don't just sleep on our watch. That's really important.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor up for questions. I'm sure a lot of questions here. Would like to start? Over here.
Thank you. On preview, I have a question to Kasha. Two, actually, and maybe one of them is very hard to answer, but my first question is maybe not so hard. I have to admit, I don't know enough about Uganda, but is there much corruption within the police and the government, which I somehow think I'm not clear enough about it. And my other question, what country in Africa has the best track concerning the gay question? Which of the African countries has the most right? Not enough, but where gays have the most right. I mean, is that quite clear which country it is? It is.
Okay, to start with your last question, South Africa. South Africa has the most progressive constitution in the whole world, actually, and it has the only record on paper in Africa. But unfortunately, as much as South Africa has this constitution, it has the highest rate of hate crime and murder and homophobia in the world also. It's second to Brazil and Nigeria.
So it has not reached the general public?
Yes, the laws are there.
Yes.
Of course, we all know that the laws are not a solution to all all problems.
Are they not implemented at all?
They are not implemented at all, that's what I can say. I lived in South Africa myself for 2 years, just to see how the movement there went about change of the laws. And I must say that the situation, especially of the black lesbians in the townships, almost every week there's a rape, a murder, and all this. So South Africa is supposed to be the leading organization on the African continent in the issue of human rights and LGBT rights, but unfortunately it's not as it's supposed to be. It's doing well at the UN. It has sponsored resolutions, because I've worked closely with the delegation of the South African and the UN myself, but it's not really doing enough on the continent. Because I remember in 2009, South Africa was changing an ambassador to Uganda, and this is the time the anti-homosexuality bill, or the Kill the Gays bill, was introduced. And the South African government sent an ambassador, a new ambassador to Uganda, who is very homophobic, and who was actually in court facing charges of homophobic remarks in the media. And then we lobbied around the continent, because we have continental LGBT organizations that we work with, and so the whole African united and said, and not only LGBT organizations, even human rights organizations, women organizations, and we said, Uganda is in a terrible situation, you cannot send a homophobic ambassador. And the South African organizations talked to their government and said the situation of Uganda is really very, very dire right now. You cannot send someone who is in court facing charges of homophobia to a country that is very homophobic. It didn't work out. They went ahead and sent him to Uganda. So just to give you an example of what is happening. And we've called on the South African government to stand up to condemn the anti-homosexuality bill in Uganda. And it has refused. Yet other not governments, because we know they are also homophobic, but we expected a government like South Africa to really stand up to show its leadership, and it has failed. And the African Commission, our Coalition of African Lesbians, this is a continental organization that brings us together as one voice on the continent as lesbians, and we also have one called AMSHA that brings together gay men to speak as one voice. And then we have Pan-African ILGA, which is the ILGA, like ILGA Europe, ILGA. So we all come together to speak as one voice on the continent, because we face similar challenges. So at the African Commission for Human and People's Rights, as the Coalition of African Lesbians, we put in an application for observer status to be able to have ECOSOC status at the African Commission. And it was turned down with only 2 sentences and saying that whatever we are dealing with is not human rights, meaning lesbian rights were not human rights. So we said this organization is registered in South Africa, meaning it's legal because it's registered in South Africa. So we told the South African government to help us challenge this at the African Commission. Otherwise, if the organization was illegal, it wouldn't be registered in their own country. And they failed. It's now 2 years down the road. We've never heard from them. So South Africa has good laws, record on paper, implementation, there is nothing.
So even there that people may be risking their lives.
Oh yes, many. As I said, there's a lot of hate crime. And so then the issue of corruption, yes, Uganda is a very, very corrupt country, not only in the police, in every department, even the president's office itself, because we've seen all the stories come out of the Prime Minister's office, and that's why actually 2 weeks ago Ireland told them to refund their donor aid, and they did refund it, because of course it caused a backlash for us, because people are saying, governments have come out to say they'll cut aid because of the gay bill. And so when they cut aid, Irish cut aid over corruption, instead they said it was just a disguise. They're cutting aid because of the gay people, and now they're targeting us. They're saying that it's us who are causing all this, so they're scapegoating us. And that's why we've been very clear and telling governments and donor agencies, do not cut aid on condition of the gay community. Because first of all, we do not live separately in the societies. Even the little services that the government can do without swindling the money also help us as a gay community. We do not live in isolation. And secondly, it will scapegoat us the more. Yet already every problem that comes in Uganda is about gays. We have the marriage and divorce bill that was dropped from Parliament, and actually this bill has been in Parliament for the last 47 years. But every time it comes, they choose a group to scapegoat, and this time it's the homosexuals, because homosexuals want everyone to divorce and become homosexuals, and that's why they dropped it. Homosexuals don't believe in marriages, in families. That's why they're proposing the marriage and divorce bill. So they've dropped it again in Parliament because they've used, every time it comes up, they use a small minority group to attach it to. So there's a lot going on, but everything right now that is happening is about, it's homosexuals that are causing it. We had terror attacks on the 10th of July during the World Cup finals, and the next day that the headline was homo terrors. They said it's homosexuals again who are responsible for the terror attacks. So every bad thing that is happening right now. And the reason why they are doing that is to divert people's attention from pressing issues in the country. Yeah, so the corruption is there, and every time the corruption issue comes up, they bring about the gay issue.
I'm surprised that they're even organized. But here in Iceland, we are not as good as we think. Because I would like to remind everybody here that for not very long ago, there was a teacher in we say in the capital of the Northern Iceland, who taught at the school, and who wrote on his own homepage, not on the schools, very derogatory about gays, because he belongs to some faith, Christian faith, that, you know, they almost have horns, the gays, in his mind. And so he writes in this way about gays and is teaching, I think, youngsters. Do you remember? Not small children, but youngsters. And
Teenagers.
Yeah.
Teenagers, yeah.
what? How?
Teenagers.
Teenagers. Yes, that's what I meant. And when it came out how he was writing, many people got very angry. Not necessarily people who had teenagers who were gay, just simply they were very angry about this and protested that he should be teaching. And at first, if I remember rightly, you will correct me, the school did nothing. But at long last, he was fired from the school, which I thought was right. He just said that this was what he said in his private time. But how he said it was, you know, in an unbelievable way. And so many people say such a man should not be teaching teenagers. That's not a responsible thing to let him do. And what do you think? When he was fired, a lot of people wrote to protest. This was against human rights.
Okay,
I think he should have had another job, not teaching.
Especially the future generation
Yes,
is
yes.
brainwashing their heads.
Exactly.
And
do
for
we
us,
have other questions?
I have to list.
You have a question?
I do.
Yeah, oh, perfect.
I'll hold on if.
No, go ahead, please. You can just give me hands up if anybody has questions. Okay.
I'm wondering about two things, the feminist movement and then politicians. So let's do the feminist movement first, perhaps. I believe that the feminist movement in Iceland has contributed immensely to the advancement of LGBTQ rights. Because what they have done and succeeded quite well in is sort of breaking up the stereotypical patriarchal society, and that helps the LGBTQ people who came after with our struggle. And it was even directly, it was the women's list in Parliament, or the Women's Party, who most fought for free rights within Parliament at the beginning. So I'd like to ask, do you have a connection to the women's rights movement in Uganda?
Oh, yeah. I thought you were still going with the other question. Yes, I'm a feminist myself. It was not easy, but we are part of the feminist movement as my organization. It was not easy and still is not easy. In 2007, I was invited for a 2-week feminist workshop forum, and I remember when in the evening after checking in to the hotel, there was introductions, and in these introductions I had to introduce myself to you, and then you introduce yourself to me, and then you introduce me to the members. I introduce you, and so I stood up and introduced my new friend. This is my new friend Esther. Esther works here, and so it was time for Esther to introduce me. Esther failed to introduce me. because she didn't know how to start saying that Kasha is coming from a lesbian organization. She just couldn't get the words out of her mouth. Because you had to tell her, I come from this organization, this is what we work with. So I told her, I'm coming from Freedom and Roam Uganda, it's a lesbian organization. She pulled back, she's like, So when she stood up, she couldn't, and actually, whilst she's standing, she just bent down and picked her bag and left the room. And it was for East Africa. So she had packed her car at the hotel because she was Ugandan. She went upstairs and got all her bags from the hotel. We had just arrived, remember that day. And she went into the car and drove back home. Others, after dinner, wanted to go, but they couldn't because they couldn't change their flights on their own. They hadn't booked their flights. So, yeah, because they felt they were in a wrong forum. How can a lesbian be in this space? So the next day, at breakfast, I sat alone. At lunch, I sat alone. At dinner, I sat alone. People could not just believe, so no one wanted to sit on my table. And this was supposed to happen to spend 2 weeks. But I stayed. And because I knew the organizers, they invited me there. Because for them, they were already working with us. And they told me, do not sit with us. The organizers, because they wanted me to sit with people I don't know. So they said, even if they leave you alone on the table, stay there. Don't worry, but don't come and sit with us. We want them to come and sit with you. So it went on for about the first week. But the woman came back, and she said she could not sleep. She said her head kept spinning and spinning. The children were asking her, but mommy, you said you're coming after 2 weeks. What happened? So she comes back and testifies and says that she could just not believe it. She was saying, maybe this is an opportunity for me to hear more, to learn more. Oh, what if this was my daughter? So a lot went on passing into her head. She came back, she said that. So slowly by slowly, people who were not sitting with me at breakfast, one by one started sitting with me, 2 by 2. So people were asking me questions, and I was very free, and I was sharing with everyone. I didn't mind. For me, I was just using the opportunity I had gotten because I had always wanted to be there. So I never got tired of talking, even repeating myself. Talk and talk and talk. By the end of the 2 weeks, I was actually the favorite of everyone. During the last party, I danced with everyone. Hugs, people were like, oh, you're amazing, it was good to meet you, can we keep in touch, and all this. And for me, even the first days, I didn't feel sorry at all. I didn't even feel hurt at all, because I knew what I wanted. I was like, this is my space, I belong here.
But did you know exactly what they were afraid of? And
Yes,
relation from outside, or
No,
afraid
because-
of you personally? I mean,
They were afraid of because we had people from Sudan, we had people from Ethiopia, who don't even talk about women's rights issues. Now here they are being exposed to a